Just look at it, would you? What's up, motherfuckers? Very green day today. Pretty much exactly what we're looking for. SPY up green on news of America dropping dick on Syria this past Friday. That's why SPY was green today. And AMC climbing to the upside. Could not ask for a better day. Legitimately, you can't even ask for a better day. That was perfect. Perfect price action all around, starting with SPY. I'm not going to really go over the symmetrics of this move. I've done it way too many times by now. Sometime in the near future, once we check off some more landmarks here, I'll go over this entire thing. I'm going to stop doing it every video. There's no point. But mentioned in my last video, we were coming down to check off this landmark right here, the 410, the wick here to the downside, which we did on Friday, actually wicking a little bit through it, but today just gapped up and then just nothing but green all day. This looks amazing. I would say short to medium term, we're looking for a bounce to 450 roughly on SPY. I'm not sure how fast it's gonna play out or slow, but that is what we're looking for, and it looks like this is gonna play out relatively fast. I mean, from this bottom wick here, you are just shredding up to 450. Test 420 one more time, and then all-time highs. So that's what we're looking for over here. Beautiful bounce off of 410. Beautiful landmark. Symmetry looks amazing. Could not have asked for a better day today. I went over this in my last two videos, the side-by-side of SPY's macro. So SPY from all-time highs down to the bottom of the descending broadening wedge, which would have been from all-time highs here down to this point. And we're looking at that side by side with the 460 rejection down to this point here. So not only did we check off the symmetrical landmark at 410, and now we're looking for upside, but at the same time, looking at SPY's macro side by side now, here it is. So I went through all of this in my last two videos. I'm not going to bother doing it again. I'm going to try to keep this video relatively short. So here was all of the downside, here's all the downside, and then last Friday we fell through this horizontal trend. I can go over the last part. So you bounce off of the horizontal trend here up to the red box on both sides, which is higher than the red arrow, and then you come down, wick below the horizontal line on both sides, reclaim, and then you knife through. Hit the 410 symmetrical landmark. I said the bottom's in my last video, expect upside. Here we are. 415 roughly, SPY closed today. And the bears just got absolutely fucked today. We love to see that. And the pain is not over. So, expect upside for the rest of the month going forward for S&P 500. Whether it's choppy or not, will be higher highs and higher lows to the upside. The next landmark we're looking for is 420. This bounce off 420 roughly, 422 to 425-ish, and then pulling back to this trend. That's what we're looking for, and then just continued upside. Climbing to the upside to 450 from there. This looks amazing. No complaints whatsoever. Getting into AMC, and I'm skipping all the extra shit today. I'm skipping the macros and indicators, all that shit. We're just going to talk about a few things. Number one, the flat portion looks great. Here's your first and second bottom, the double peak move, first and second bottom, double peak move, the tri-peak, and then your knife to the third bottom all-time low, the uptrend off, the rejection chop zone, uptrend off, rejection chop zone. And today we found the beautiful bounce here in the process of completing this candle right here, January 15th. Date range from the beginning to your peak in 2021, 342 days. In the current cycle, from the beginning to where we are today, 333 days. We are now 9 days away from being one-to-one with the flat portion, with that 9th day landing on November 8th earnings. I hate throwing dates around. I really do. But the way that this is lining up and the potential for this right now, so let me just start here. Not only are we tracking through the macro faster, and granted I don't have the macro chart today, but I've gone over it, the macro from IPO. So the original macro from IPO, which ends with your January squeeze, and then the second macro is the January squeeze, the June squeeze, all the way down to where we are now. Now we're looking for the third macro. This macro, the current one, played out twice as fast as the previous macro from IPO. So we should be expecting to peak before this, but the thing is here, the flat portion is legitimately 1-to-1. With that 1-to-1 date, 342 days, and landing on November 8th earnings, I have to lean that we are peaking on November 8th. Whether it's the 1400 move or not, I have to lean that we are starting to squeeze at least on November 8th earnings. I know it's a very bold claim. It's a week and a half away. But this is just lining up perfectly. We're legitimately 9 days away from being 1-to-1 now. We're right here. Here's the rest. Squeeze. Straight line. So, this looks amazing. No complaints here whatsoever. So here's the flat portion zoomed. So what we're doing here is looking at the third bottom all-time low of the previous cycle, the uptrend, the pullback chop zone, and the rest of it compared to the third bottom all-time low of the current, the uptrend, the pullback, and chop zone side by side. So here it is. On the left is 2021. On the right is current. So here's your third bottom all-time low. The cup out. I don't know why it keeps doing that. This is old. This is when we were in the middle of the chop zone. This is tracked perfectly. I don't know why this just came up for no reason, but here it is. This was an earlier chart when we were just tracking through the chop here. This is tracked perfectly the entire time. So here it is. So here's the cup out, green circle pokes above that horizontal line, the yellow one there. Fall back through, chop down here, fall back through, chop down here, reclaiming the yellow, and then you get the rest of the move to the top. That's where you reject, and then you come down to the chop zone. Double bottom, double top, double bottom, double top. The 1070 wick we didn't quite get. I mentioned in my last video. The body of this candle ends here, and this is the wick. Very, very dramatic wick, and very reasonable. I would say at this point it's pretty much certain that this was that landmark right here, this pop right here. Then you pull back from there and start forming some higher lows than the double bottom on both sides, and then you get into the January 15th uptrend. That's where we are. We started it today. This uptrend will be taking us to $13, $14. And it's probably going to be over the course of this entire week and potentially Monday, Tuesday of next week. But that's the target. This uptrend should be taking us to $13, $14, which would complete January 15th and complete our macro. So this looks great. Expecting more upside here. There's really not much to say. Tomorrow might be pretty sideways. I'll get into that. But this looks great. The tracking here is amazing. Macro, micro, it all looks great. Beautiful start to the week for AMC. Touched $10 today, closed $9.90 something. I don't even know. I was on my way home. So this looks great. This looks great. So here's the other perspective with the symmetry now. And we're looking at here, I've mentioned multiple times, this is the previous iteration, your third bottom all-time low of the current cycle, the pop-off, and this was that very choppy pullback we had for 2 or 3 weeks, chopping sideways here before we got that bull run for 2 weeks, and this was the top of the bull run, and then the pullback again, very sideways choppy, playing out exactly how we saw previously. Last week broke out and spent the entire week testing, and then today found a very nice bounce off. Landmark wise, I would have to say we're right here, which in that case, we would be expecting a pullback to 940 to 950, somewhere in this range. Potentially it's higher, 940 to 960 range. Pullback tomorrow. But also, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. Maybe we get the pop first. Maybe we get the pullback first. But this wick here is the equivalent of that 10.5, 10.7 wick. The one we were looking for, the 10.5, 10.7 landmark, we're past that. Don't be confused for what I'm saying. We're past that landmark. This wick here will be taking us to that 10.5, 10.7 range where we likely reject and then come down again and just double bottom on top of the previous range. And the top of the previous range would roughly be that 940 to 960 right across here. So whether we get the upside at open or we don't, maybe at open we come down and then we climb up from there and then we come back down again. But regardless, I expect tomorrow to be relatively sideways. I wouldn't be surprised to find a new local high, that 10.5 to 10.7. I wouldn't be surprised to see that tomorrow, but I wouldn't expect anything past that. I'm expecting to probably chop here, forming support on the previous range. More than likely what happens tomorrow is we get some kind of a doji candle on the daily, which is fine because then Wednesday we would be expecting boom booms, Thursday, Friday, same story, just climbing to the upside. it's very possible we just continue to rip to the upside tomorrow too. There's no downside. It's pretty much the point here. Whether we just chop all day tomorrow sideways and then Wednesday we start moving up again, or whether we just move up tomorrow, the point I'm trying to make here is that the bottom's in. There's no more downside to be had besides this pullback to that 940 to 960 range. So that's it. This looks amazing. Here was just the projection, and this is a daily perspective. This was the projection I showed last Friday. Daily candles here, and this would have been the equivalent of today's daily candle, which is pretty accurate. This top would have been somewhere around $10. High of day was $10.01, I believe. So looks good. And then this would be tomorrow's candle, pull back to 940 to 960, and this would be the 1050 to 1070 wick. See what happens. So I mean, this played out pretty much identically to what we saw previously, this chop sideways, the cup here. So you're forming a cup into a bull run, and then again forming a cup into a bull run. It's very possible, and I mentioned this multiple times, that this uptrend out of it will look very similar to what we saw here. In which case we would be expecting this candle tomorrow, more or less a gravestone doji, hitting that 10.5, 10.7 range, pulling back to 940 to 960, closing somewhere in the middle, closing around, high $9 range, very possible for tomorrow. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just continued upside. So that's that. Here is the flat portion side by side, but really just looking at the W here, the final iteration, the W with the tri-peak versus this one. So starting here, here's your second bottom. Here's your second bottom into the tri-peak, and then knifing down for your third bottom all-time low, from which you form an uptrend, reject that trend, chop, and then break out of it January 15th. And here we are. Here's third bottom all-time low, the uptrend, reject, pull back, chopping, and now poking through that line. The right shoulder here is pretty much formed the inverse head and shoulders. I mentioned the macro V is an inverse head and shoulders. It's almost done forming and will be done when we conclude this uptrend to $13, $14, from which we're looking for a gap up directly into a straight line into our squeeze. So this looks amazing. Here's just showing it again with the EMAs. So just, showing you that this chop zone is where you meet the 20 EMA, and then you gap over it into your squeeze. And here we are. Today we actually closed over the 20 EMA, battling this whole time. Look at these wicks. Off the 20, off the 20, off the 20, over and over, just rejecting. And then today, reclaimed and closed above, and on top of it, broke this trend. The financial freedom trend line has now been broken. We still need to get the rest of the uptrend to $14 before we gap up though. So that's what we're looking for going forward. It's that. Here it is again with Heikin-Ashi candles. I feel like this looks pretty cool. I like this visual a little bit better. So here's coming down to your first bottom in January 2021, chopping, coming down to your first bottom, chopping, you get that double peak move. Kind of helps if you just look at the area underneath the candles rather than looking at the candles themselves. So here's the first bottom, double peak move down to your second, which is a higher low. First bottom, double peak move down to your second, which is a higher low. Here's that little cup on the side, then you knife to your second bottom, and then again, the little cup on the side, knifing to your second bottom. The tri-peak, and then your knife to your third bottom all-time low, the uptrend, rejection, chopping, the uptrend, rejection, chopping, and now we're fighting for that trend and actually broke out of it today. This looks fucking incredible. Legitimately, this looks amazing. This is the rest of our macro right here. Or should I say the beginning of the next macro is right here, just straight green candles into a squeeze. That's what we're looking for going forward. Legitimately, we are looking for green candles into a squeeze now. One thing I did forget to mention is that the January 15th move, and really quickly I'll get into this, the January 15th move that takes us to $13, $14, here's the top wick. We are expecting a pullback from the top of that move, which is the V. And you should know, most of you should know by now what the V is. So here's the top of that move, $13, $14, and then the V, here's the V, and then that's the gap up, macro break into your squeeze. We're pretty much going to be looking for the same thing over here, which would be $13, $14, a very sharp knife, down to probably 1050 to 1070 range, breaking below this line, this horizontal line, would probably take us somewhere in the middle of this range here, 1050 to 1070, and then gapping up And it makes sense. Like I mentioned previously, here's the cup and then the bull run out of it and then the knife. So again, a cup, a bull run out of it, and then we're looking for a knife. Except this time, after the knife, we're expecting a gap up, not this sideways chop bullshit. Last thing, just updated January 15th side-by-side now. So 1 minute chart on the left and the macro on the right. Here's this week's weekly candle. So far, this looks fucking amazing. We're looking for the rest of the uptrend to this yellow horizontal line, $13.50 to $14, to conclude the V, which would be this right here. I'm not going to really waste time. And then once we get that, theoretically, we gap up to all-time highs, our macro fractal break. There's your micro fractal break, candles gap up above the range. We're looking for the same thing, and this is lining up for November 8th earnings as it stands. So here it is zoomed in even more. Here's your 4 touches on the top, your 4 touches on the top. This is the macro on the right and the 1 minute on the left. So keep in mind, all 4 of these touches up top, we were halted to preserve the pattern. Your 3 bottoms descending, your 3 bottoms descending, and then knifing off of your 4th touch up off the top. Your 4th touch up the top, knifing, and then you get the V. And here it is. We're just looking for the rest of this candle up to this horizontal line. That's it. $13, $14, which theoretically we should be seeing this week, if not this week, early next week, concludes the macro. And as a matter of fact, the way that this plays out, and let me see if I can try to explain this as simply as I can. So, right before our macro break, right before we gap up, the micro and the macro will be synced. And what I mean by that is, so once we get the rest of this up, this is the January 15th, 2021. Once we get the rest of this move, $13, $14, we get the V off of it, which probably pulls us back to 1050, 1070 range. We're looking for a gap up on the micro. So this is the micro chart. We'd be looking for this gap up the same way we gapped up here. At the same time, doing this, all of that price action, $13, $14 to pull back the V, would also be completing the macro V. So that is January 15th on a micro level. This is January 15th on a macro level. Completing January 15th on the micro level all of this week and early next week will also complete January 15th on the macro level, completing the macro V, from which we're looking for a gap up. So pretty much what I'm saying is the point where the micro syncs up to the macro, where both the macro January 15th is completing the V and the micro January 15th is completing the V. That is where you find your macro break, a new macro and a squeeze. I don't know if that made sense. I tried to explain it as simply as I could. But what a fucking start to the week. What a fucking great start to the week. We're looking for upside all week. Don't be surprised if tomorrow we get some kind of doji, some kind of bullshit sideways chop, a new local high potentially tomorrow, pulling back to that 940 to 960 range to establish support. And don't be surprised if we just continue shredding to the upside. We're going to be seeing green all week, as well as the S&P 500. That's it for the video. Did not mean to make that 18 minutes long. Tomorrow's will probably be a little bit shorter than this one. So that's it. I'll catch you guys with an update tomorrow.